The whiskey burned less than the memories, but Jack Thornton drank anyway, watching the sunset paint the New Mexico sky the color of old blood. It was 1882, and the town of Silver Ridge sat nestled in the high desert like a forgotten prayer. Jack had been here 3 years now, ever since the war that never really ended for him. Not the Civil War, though he had fought in that too, but the personal war that came after. The one that took his brother, his ranch, and damn near his soul. He worked odd jobs now, breaking horses mostly, and spent his nights at the Lucky Dollar Saloon, sitting in the same corner chair like a ghost haunting his own life. The bartender, Old Pete, had stopped asking if Jack wanted another round. He just poured. That is how Jack liked it. No questions, no concern, just the amber liquid that helped him forget for a few hours that he was still breathing when better men were not. "You planning to drink yourself into the ground tonight, Thornton?" Pete finally asked, his grizzled face creased with something that might have been worry. Jack did not answer. He never did. Words felt like too much effort when your heart had turned to stone. He had been 28 when everything fell apart. Now at 31 he felt ancient. The purgatory he lived in stretched endlessly in all directions. No past worth remembering, no future worth imagining. Just this eternal present of dust and drink and the hollow echo of his own footsteps. The saloon doors swung open, letting in a gust of evening wind and something else. Someone else. Jack did not look up at first. People came and went. None of it mattered. "I am looking for someone who knows horses," a woman's voice said, clear and direct. Not the usual saloon girl's practice sweetness. This voice had steel in it. Pete gestured toward Jack. "That would be Thornton, miss. Best hand with horses in 3 territories. When he is sober, anyway." Jack finally raised his eyes. The woman standing in the doorway was maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes the color of the desert sage. She wore a split riding skirt and a white blouse dusty from travel. She looked at Jack with an expression he could not quite read. Not pity, thank God. He could not stomach pity. Something more like assessment. "Are you sober now?" she asked directly. "Sober enough," Jack said, his voice rough from disuse. "I need someone to help me with a wild mustang. I've been trying for 3 weeks, and he will not let me near him. I was told you could help." Jack studied her. Most women would have sent a man to ask, "Why do you care about one wild horse?" "Because he is mine, and I do not give up on what is mine," she said simply. Something in those words stirred in Jack's chest, like a coal that had been cold for years suddenly remembering it once held fire. He stood, surprised his legs worked properly. "I will take a look. Tomorrow." "Tonight," she said. "He broke through the fence again. If I do not get him secured, he will be gone by morning." Jack wanted to refuse, to sink back into his chair and his whiskey. But she was already walking out, clearly expecting him to follow, against his better judgment, against every instinct that told him to stay in his safe, numb cocoon. He did. Her name was Elena Blackwood, and she had inherited a small ranch 5 miles outside of town from an uncle she had never met. She had come west from St. Louis 3 months ago, leaving behind a life that Jack sensed she did not want to discuss. He understood that. Some stories were better left untold. The moon was rising full and bright when they reached her property. It was modest but well kept, a small ranch house and a barn that had seen better days but still stood proud. In the corral, barely visible in the silver light, a dark shape moved with restless energy. "That is him?" Elena said softly. "I call him Shadow." Jack approached the fence slowly. The horse was a magnificent black mustang, probably 4 or 5 years old, with the kind of spirit that could not be broken, only earned. He recognized something in the animal's eyes, the same trapped wildness he saw in his own mirror. "He has been hurt," Jack said, noting the way the horse favored his left side. "Yes. There was barbed wire where I found him. I got most of it out, but he will not let me close enough to finish the job." Jack climbed over the fence, ignoring Elena's sharp intake of breath. This was foolish. The horse could kill him easily, but maybe that would be a mercy. He moved slow, not directly at the mustang, but in a wide arc, giving the animal space to decide. "Easy now," he murmured. "Nobody here is going to hurt you." The horse's ears flicked forward, then back, watching, calculating. Jack kept moving, kept talking, his voice low and steady. It was the most he had spoken in months. "I know how you feel," he said to the horse, "trapped in something you did not ask for, hurting and not knowing how to stop hurting. Nobody can fix that for you. But maybe someone can help you remember what it is like to run free without the pain." He was close now, close enough to see the intelligence in Shadow's dark eyes, close enough to die if the horse decided to strike. Instead, the mustang's head lowered just slightly, not submission, but curiosity. Jack extended his hand, palm down, letting the horse catch his scent. Long minutes passed. Elena stood frozen by the fence, barely breathing. Then slowly, Shadow stretched his neck forward and touched his nose to Jack's hand. Something cracked in Jack's chest. Some small part of the wall he had built around himself. Over the next 2 weeks, Jack came to Elena's ranch every day. He told himself it was just about the horse, about earning enough money to keep himself in whiskey. But that was a lie, and somewhere deep down, he knew it. Elena was different from anyone he had met. She worked alongside him without complaint, learning how to approach Shadow, how to read his moods. She did not push Jack to talk about himself, but her presence itself was a kind of conversation. She hummed while she worked, old songs that sounded like hope. "Where did you learn about horses?" she asked one afternoon as they stood watching Shadow run circles in the larger pasture they had moved him to. "My father had a ranch in Texas," Jack said. "Long time ago." "Do you miss it?" The question landed like a punch. "Every day," he admitted. The words dragged from somewhere deep. "But it is gone now. Burned during a range war. My brother tried to defend it alone while I was off playing soldier in some war that did not matter. He died, and I lived. And that is the way of things." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I am sorry." "Everyone is sorry. Sorry does not bring anyone back." "No," she agreed. "But maybe it reminds us we are not alone in our grief." Jack looked at her sharply. "What do you know about grief?" Her eyes met his, and he saw depths there he had not noticed before. "I know that I ran from a marriage to a man who thought a wife was property. I know that my parents disowned me for leaving. I know that I came west to start over, and some days I wonder if I am strong enough to keep going. But then I see that horse out there, still wild but learning to trust again, and I think maybe there is hope for all of us." The honesty of it stunned him into silence. She had her own ghosts, her own purgatory, but she was fighting her way out of it, inch by inch. That night, Jack did not go to the Lucky Dollar. He went back to the small room he rented above the general store and lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in 3 years, he thought about tomorrow not as another day to endure, but as something that might hold possibility. By the end of the month, Shadow would take food from Jack's hand and allow both him and Elena to check his wounds. The barbed wire damage was healing clean, and the horse's trust was growing. Jack found himself staying later each day, helping Elena repair the barn roof, fix the broken wagon wheel, reinforce the fences. "You do not have to do all this," Elena said one evening as they sat on her porch steps watching the sun go down. "I can pay you for the work with the horse, but I cannot afford much more." "I know," Jack said. He did not know how to explain that he was not here for money anymore, that her ranch had become the only place where the weight on his chest eased slightly, that her voice had become the thing that pulled him out of bed in the morning. Elena turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "Why are you really here, Jack?" He should have lied, should have made up some excuse about having nothing better to do. Instead, he found himself telling the truth. "Because when I am here, I do not feel dead inside." The words hung in the air between them. Elena's hand found his, her fingers warm against his calloused palm. You are not dead, Jack Thornton. You are just hurt, like shadow. But you are healing too, even if you cannot see it yet. I do not know how to heal, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. I do not know how to be anything other than this broken thing. You do not have to know how. You just have to be willing to try. He looked at her then, really looked at her, saw the strength in her face, the kindness that had not been beaten out of her despite everything she had been through, saw someone who had every reason to give up but chose to keep going anyway. And he realized that somewhere along the way, without meaning to, he had started to care about her. More than care. He had started to feel again, and it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Elena, he started, not sure what he wanted to say. She squeezed his hand. I know. I feel it too. The kiss happened slowly, like they had all the time in the world. Her lips were soft against his, tasting of the coffee they had shared, and something sweeter, something like redemption. When they pulled apart, Jack was breathing hard, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear. I have not felt anything in so long, he confessed. I am scared that I will ruin this, that I will ruin you. You will not, Elena said with certainty. We will figure it out together. But life in the New Mexico territory was never simple. 2 days later, trouble arrived in the form of 3 men on horseback. Jack was in the barn when he heard Elena's raised voice. He came out fast, his hand instinctively going to the gun he still wore out of habit. The man in the center was well dressed in a way that spoke of city money. His face was handsome but cold, and he looked at Elena with an expression of ownership that made Jack's blood boil. I have told you, Richard, I'm not going back, Elena was saying, her voice steady despite the fear Jack could see in her eyes. You do not have a choice, the man Richard said smoothly. You are still my wife. I have papers that prove it. You can come back willingly, or I can take you back by force. The hell you will, Jack said, stepping forward. Richard's eyes shifted to him, cold and assessing. And who might you be? Someone who is telling you to leave. Now. This does not concern you, Cowboy. This is between a man and his wife. She says she is not going back. That makes it my concern. One of Richard's men, a rough-looking type with a scar across his cheek, moved his hand toward his gun. Jack's was out faster, leveled and steady. Do not, he said quietly. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Richard's face flushed with anger. You are making a mistake. I am a respected businessman in St. Louis. I have friends, influence. You cannot hide her from me. I am not hiding, Elena said, finding her voice. I left you legally, Richard. I filed for divorce on grounds of cruelty. You beat me for 2 years, and I will not let you touch me again. Those are lies, Richard snarled, his calm facade cracking. You are my wife, and you will do as I say. She is not going anywhere, Jack repeated. His gun had not wavered. And if you come back here, I will not be asking nicely. For a long moment, Richard stared at them both, calculation in his eyes. Then he smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You will regret this, both of you. He wheeled his horse around, and his men followed. They rode off toward town, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Elena was shaking. Jack holstered his gun and went to her, pulling her into his arms. She clung to him, her face pressed against his chest. He will not stop, she said, her voice muffled. He never stops. He thinks I am his property. Then we will deal with him, Jack said, together. I do not want you to get hurt because of me. Too late, Jack said, pulling back to look at her. I am already in this, Elena, all the way in, and I am not letting anyone take you. They went to the sheriff the next day, a steady man named Tom Bridger who had served in the war with Jack. Jack explained the situation, and Elena showed the papers she had filed in St. Louis. Legally, you are in the right, Bridger said, studying the documents. But if he is as influential as you say, he might try to use the law against you anyway? Make up charges, get a friendly judge? It happens. So what do we do? Jack asked. Bridger leaned back in his chair. You get married. Here. In New Mexico. Once you're wed to someone else, his claim is invalid no matter what some St. Louis judge says. And if he tries anything violent, well, we have laws about that too. Jack and Elena looked at each other. They had only kissed once, had only admitted their feelings days ago. Marriage was an enormous step. You do not have to, Elena said quickly. I will not trap you into this. I can run somewhere else. Start over again. No, Jack said. The word came out hard and sure. No more running. Not for either of us. He took her hand. I know this is fast. I know we have barely started whatever this is between us, but Elena, you pulled me out of the darkest place I have ever been. You made me want to live again. If marrying you keeps you safe and gives us a chance at something real, then that is what I want to do. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything. They were married 3 days later in a small ceremony at the church in Silver Ridge. Pete from the Lucky Dollar stood as witness, along with Sheriff Bridger and a handful of townspeople who had come to know Elena. She wore a simple blue dress, and Jack wore his cleanest shirt. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Jack kissed her with all the feeling he had locked away for 3 years, and it felt like coming home. Richard tried to make trouble, as they knew he would. He went to the territorial judge, claimed Elena had been coerced, demanded she be returned to him. But the judge, a fair man named Harrison, who had no love for Eastern businessmen trying to throw their weight around in his territory, reviewed the case and sided with Elena. Her divorce was valid, her new marriage was legal, and Richard had no claim. Richard left Silver Ridge a week later, defeated and furious. Jack watched him go from the porch of what was now his and Elena's ranch, his arm around his wife's shoulders. Is it really over? Elena asked. It is really over, Jack confirmed. She turned in his arms, her hands coming up to frame his face. Thank you for fighting for me, for believing me. You fought for me first, Jack said. You saw something in me worth saving when I had given up. That is a debt I can never repay. It is not a debt, Elena said softly. It is love. The word should have scared him. Instead, it settled into his chest like a missing piece clicking into place. Yes, he agreed, it is love. They spent the next months building their life together. Jack taught Elena everything he knew about ranching, and she proved to be a quick study. They bought more horses, started breaking and training them to sell. Shadow became their prize stallion, no longer wild but never broken, and his offspring carried his spirit. The ranch prospered in small, steady ways. They were not rich, but they had enough. More importantly, they had each other. Jack found himself laughing again, something he thought he had forgotten how to do. Elena's smile became the thing he looked forward to most each day. One evening, almost a year after they had married, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Elena's head rested on Jack's shoulder, and his arm was around her waist. Do you ever think about before, she asked, about what your life was like? Sometimes, Jack admitted, but it does not hurt like it used to. I will always carry my brother with me, always wish things had been different, but I'm not stuck there anymore. You pulled me out of that purgatory, Elena. You showed me that life could be more than just surviving. You did the same for me, she said. I was so scared when I came here. Scared I would never be free, never be safe. But with you, I am both. He tilted her face up to kiss her, slow and sweet. I love you, he said. The words came easier now, though they still carried weight. I love you too, she replied. And Jack, there is something I need to tell you. He pulled back slightly, searching her face. There was something in her expression, a mix of joy and nervousness. I am with child, she said softly. We are going to have a baby. For a moment, Jack could not breathe. A baby. New life. something he had never let himself imagine. Fear spiked through him, sharp and immediate. What if he failed this child the way he had failed his brother? What if he was not strong enough, good enough? As if reading his thoughts, Elena took his hand and pressed it to her still flat stomach. You are going to be a wonderful father, Jack Thornton. I know you are scared, but we will do this together, just like everything else. The fear did not go away entirely, but it was matched by something else: hope, joy, a fierce protectiveness that took his breath away. Together, he echoed and pulled her close. Their son was born in the spring of 1884, a healthy boy with Jack's dark hair and Elena's sage-colored eyes. They named him Thomas, after Jack's brother, and when Jack held him for the first time, he wept. Not tears of grief, but of gratitude, for this second chance, for this woman who had refused to let him stay lost in his darkness, for this tiny life that represented everything good and pure and possible. Elena watched from the bed, exhausted but glowing. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I spent 3 years in Purgatory," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was stuck in that place, sure I would never get out. But you pulled me into the light, Elena. You saved me." "We saved each other," she corrected gently. He brought Thomas to her, placing their son in her arms, and sat on the edge of the bed. His family, his life, his second chance. "Yes," he agreed. "We saved each other." The years that followed were not always easy. Ranching in New Mexico territory was hard work, and there were droughts and harsh winters and all the struggles that came with frontier life. But Jack and Elena faced them together, their bond growing stronger with each challenge. Thomas grew into a bright, curious boy who loved the horses as much as his parents did. When he was 3, Elena gave birth to twin girls, Sarah and Catherine, who filled the house with laughter and chaos. Jack discovered that fatherhood suited him in ways he never expected. The fear that had gripped him when Thomas was born eased as he learned to trust himself, to trust that love was enough to guide him. Shadow lived to a ripe old age, siring dozens of foals that carried his bloodline across the territory. Jack never forgot what that horse had taught him about healing, about learning to trust again after trauma. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Jack and Elena stood on the same porch where they had shared so many sunsets. Their children were inside, supposedly sleeping, but more likely plotting some mischief. The ranch had grown substantially, and they now employed 3 ranch hands to help with the work. "Do you remember the night we met?" Jack asked, pulling Elena close. "Of course, you were the saddest man I'd ever seen, sitting in that saloon like you were already dead." "I was dead, in all the ways that mattered," Jack said, "but you would not let me stay that way." "I saw something in you," Elena said. "Even then, through all that pain and whiskey, I saw the man you could be, the man you are now." Jack thought about that younger version of himself trapped in his purgatory of grief and guilt. It felt like a lifetime ago, like a different person entirely. That man had been certain he would never be happy again, never feel anything but the hollow ache of loss. How wrong he had been. "I spent so long thinking my life ended when I lost my brother," Jack said quietly. "But really, it was just waiting to begin. Waiting for you." Elena smiled up at him, her face lined now with laugh lines and sun exposure, more beautiful to him than the day they met. "And I was running from my past, sure I would never be able to trust anyone again, but you showed me that real love is not about control or possession. It is about partnership, about choosing each other every single day." From inside, they heard a crash followed by giggling. Jack sighed. "I should check on them." "In a minute," Elena said, holding him close. "Just stay here with me for one more minute." So he did, watching the New Mexico sky turn from gold to purple to deep indigo, his wife in his arms, and his children's laughter drifting through the windows. The purgatory he had been stuck in felt like a distant dream now, a dark place that belonged to someone else. Elena had pulled him out of that darkness and into the light. But more than that, she had shown him how to stay in the light, how to build a life worth living even when the past tried to drag him down. Together, they had created something beautiful out of their shared pain, a family and a home and a love that would last the rest of their days. The stars began to appear overhead, and Jack sent up a silent thank you to whatever force had brought this woman to his life, to the wild horse that had needed healing just as much as he did, to second chances and new beginnings. Inside, Thomas called for them, and Elena laughed. Duty calls. They went inside together, ready to face whatever came next, because that was what they did. Together, always together, they faced the world and all its challenges. And in that partnership, that deep and abiding love, Jack had found not just salvation, but true happiness. The boy who had been lost in darkness was gone. In his place stood a man who knew how to love, how to live, how to cherish every moment with the people who mattered most. Elena had pulled him from purgatory into the light, and he had spent every day since making sure that light never dimmed. Their story was not one of grand adventure or dramatic heroics. It was quieter than that, more profound. It was the story of two wounded souls who found each other in the vast loneliness of the frontier and chose to heal together. It was the story of a cowboy who thought he was beyond saving and a woman brave enough to prove him wrong. And it was a love story, through and through. The kind that starts with a spark and builds into a steady flame that warms everything it touches. The kind that lasts a lifetime and beyond. Years later, when Jack was an old man with silver in his hair and grandchildren playing in the yard, he would sit on that same porch and remember the darkness that once consumed him. Remember the woman who refused to let him drown in it. Remember the moment he realized he wanted to live again. And every time he would thank whatever twist of fate had brought Elena Blackwood to Silver Ridge on that summer evening in 1882, because she had not just saved his life. She had given him a reason to embrace it fully, to step out of the shadows and into the brilliant, beautiful light of love. That was the legacy they built together on their small ranch in New Mexico Territory. Not one of wealth or fame, but one of enduring love, of family, of two people who found each other when they needed it most and held on tight through everything that followed. It was more than Jack had ever dreamed possible during those dark days at the Lucky Dollar. It was more than Elena had hoped for when she fled west to escape her past. It was everything. And as the sun set on another day in their long, full life together, Jack Thornton knew with absolute certainty that he was the luckiest man who ever lived, because he had been lost in purgatory, stuck in darkness that felt like forever, and she had pulled him out. She had pulled this broken cowboy into the light, and together they had built a life worth living. That was their story. That was their triumph. And it was a love that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of seeing someone truly and loving them anyway, broken pieces and all.